Why are you feral?
Did I figure it out? Did I figure out how to use a tripod? Hello everyone, my name is Harmony, aka Lab Cat Creations, and welcome back to my
garbage can.
Yeah, I gotta have a squeaky chair, so that's cool. Anyway, so it was requested that I do a video about how I do ink painting, and it's been a while since I've done a little tutorial type doobly, so we'll see how that goes with my new filming style and me actually being myself versus, hi everyone, this is Harmony, aka Lab Cat Creations, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna, yeah, we don't know her. So for ink painting, the things that you are going to need. Something to paint. I'm gonna paint some eyeballs. All the inks that you are going to need. So I have this one that is an ink wash. I have this one that's kind of like a transparent ink. Like it's very dark and very pigmented, but you can still kind of see through it. And then this one that is a very pigmented ink. Once you place it, it's not going anywhere. You can't see anything through it. I love this stuff. And this brand specifically is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay Black India ink. I love it. Let me fix the lighting. I'm glowing. Is that better? No, that's worse. That's worse. How did I make it worse? There we go. There we go. Some paper towels. Actually, quite a few paper towels. Toilet paper also works, but it like flakes off and leaves residue on the paper. But I mean, hey, if you don't have paper towels, it works. You can even use your sleeve. Wouldn't recommend it, but it's possible. I like to have a spare sheet of paper with me so that I can see what colors I am using, because sometimes I use colors, sometimes I just use different like gradients of gray and black, and we'll get more into that in a minute. A palette. I was not prepared. Why did I push record? Why are you screaming? Crazy kid. All right, so 2 cups of water, 1 for rinsing out your brushes and 1 for just plain water. Of course, you need your bucket. It doesn't have to be covered in stickers from the office, but it helps. Helps me. I like to have one of these handy. This is a Jelly Roll white gel pen. This stuff saves so many pieces of mine, and plus it's really good for adding details and highlights right at the end. And then this is like the most important thing. You need to acquire a squeegee. I use the squeegee for water, diluting stuff, suctioning of all kinds. I don't know, it's important. All right, and then I think that's about everything that you absolutely need to be able to do ink washes the way that I do anyways. Something optional, but something that really, really helps me is my heat gun. This thing saves so much time. When I first started doing watercolor and first started doing ink washes, I would just have to kind of sit and wait for it to dry, and you never know if the paper is gonna move, how it's gonna settle, if anything is gonna like grain up and like leave weird lines in your washes. But with this, you don't have to worry about that because it just takes all the water off the page and leaves the pigment. Also, if you're doing watercolor and ink stuff without a heat gun, you have to be super duper sure that it's absolutely 100% dry before you layer anything on top of it, because then it will just kind of all out on the page. These things do tend to get a little bit spicy, so be careful when you are using a heat gun. You can also use a blow dryer, but don't hold it too close to the paper, because I learned this the hard way. You can and will burn a hole in your paper. It's possible. It's happened. All right, so as I stated before, I'm going to be painting eyeballs. What I've done is taken a ballpoint pen and just kind of traced over my design, because the ballpoint pen that I used is waterproof. Just a regular old Bic ballpoint pen. Sometimes it moves with the water, like if you put a lot on top of it, or like if you don't wait until it's dry first, but this has been sitting for about 24 hours now, so it's good to go. Yeah, since I'm doing talking, the cats are being insane, so if you hear that, the channel's called Lab Cat Creations. You knew there were gonna be cats. Really? How could I forget this supply? This right here is masking fluid, and this stuff is amazing. This is the Winsor & Newton masking fluid, and what this does is it goes on wet, of course, and then when it dries, it kind of turns into like a rubber type material, and it repels paint. So anywhere that you put this stuff, the paint will not go. And then once it's dry, once you're done with your background or outlining, whatever you want to use this to block out certain sections of a piece for, and I'll demonstrate that in this eyeball painting that I'm doing. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, you can just kind of like peel it up, and there's a trick to it, so I can show you. Because you can rip your paper if you're not careful. And without any further ado, let us begin. The first thing that I'm going to do is use some of that masking fluid and put it down over the eyeballs so that when I'm working on the background, I don't have to like worry about painting around all of these. I can just kind of do an even wash. Gotta fix the angles. I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh boy, this is gonna be a time and a half to edit, huh? How I apply this stuff is you don't want to use the brushy part of your brush. I use just like the handle to put it on. It has the child safe cap. So you kind of get some on there, and you want to make sure to shake it up often or it will congeal in the jar. I've had that happen and it is horrifying. Do you have a toy? What are you doing? Oh, okay. Sassy. Get some on the very end. You kind of tap off all of the bubbles, and the bubbles will settle eventually. I'm just impatient. And then you just kind of scribble it on there. It takes a little while, but it's worth it. Make sure that you fill in all of your edges. Now you can just go around the outside to protect it, but I like to fill in all of it because I am a very hectic painter, as you will see. Especially when it comes to ink, because you have to move fast. All right, and just like that, the first step is done. Now all you have to do is kind of wait for it to dry, and you can tell when it's dry just from kind of lightly touching the corners. See, that one's dry, but the ones up here are not. So I'm going to chill. I'm gonna get a snack. I suggest you do the same because this might be a long video. And yeah, I'll be back momentarily. Okay, so now that everything is dry, again with the squeaky chair. Now that everything is dry, we can start figuring out what kind of washes and what colors we want to use. So I think, I probably should have thought this out beforehand. That's what I think. I'm going to use this color. This is actually the first art supply that Nick ever got me. This ink, I've made it last for over 3 years. I use it for very special occasions, so yeah. I love this. We were at the art store and we were hanging out and everything, and I saw this ink and I was like, oh man, that's such a cool color. I really love that color. He was like, do you want it? And I said, yeah, but you know, it's fine. I don't have any money. I'll just like wait or something. And he got it for me, and it was very, very sweet. This was before we were even dating too. Like, I love that guy. To start off, we need our ink wash, our other ink, and our plain water. What I always like to do is just take a kind of dropper full of the regular dark ink wash and leave that on its own. And then I do 1 drop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops, and then another full dropper of it, but you'll see why in a minute. So what I do is with the 1 drop, I put 2 squeegeefuls of water, and that just makes a very, very light gray wash. With the 5, I do the same thing, 2 droppers full, and that makes a darker wash. And then with 1 of the full squeegees, I just put another, just 1 of that, and that makes a darker wash. And then the one that's just the plain ink wash that I have mixed up is the darkest. And if you don't have an ink wash pre-mixed, that's fine. I just had an extra bottle with some ink in it, and I was like, I'm gonna put some water in it and just kind of let it be, and that's what this is. Now you need to pick out your brushes. So for this, I kind of want full coverage, so I want like a bit of a bigger brush. And I'm going to be doing some smaller detail work, so I'm going to get a medium brush. And then for lining, of course, I'm going to use a teeny tiny brush. I got this off Wish for $1. I need to get a new one. Right now I don't have $1, so we're using this. And this last well that I have here, because this is just for outlining, as you can see it's all stained and all that, but this last well here, I have to figure out how dark I want to make this green. I think I want it pretty pigmented, so I think what I'm going to do. Now, keep in mind with the other wash, it already is diluted with water. This is just plain ink, so it is not. So, 1, 2 drops. And then one squeegee full, for now anyways. So since I've already done this before and I have some experience with it, I'm gonna go on ahead and start off with a darker wash, but usually if you're just starting off, you would want to start with the lighter wash. So that would look like this. It's barely visible, right? Dry it. But then you take that same wash and you go over it, and you can just kind of build it up as you go. But again, since I've done this before, I'm going to just jump right in with a darker color. So light is 1, next lightest is 2, then 3, and then 4. That's just how I'm gonna refer to it. So I'm gonna go in with the 3. Get a pretty good amount on there. And when you're doing an ink wash, you want to start at one of your corners and kind of lay that down, spread it out a little bit, and make sure that the edges, like you always have a puddle at the edges. That way if you leave this for a second, it won't dry, so it leaves a weird line. You can just come back and kind of spread that out. And I work pretty quick with it, but when you're starting off, of course, you're gonna be not quite as practiced, and that's okay. You'll get the hang of it. You just gotta do it quite a bit. And again, keep a puddle at the edge of all of your lines that you're leaving. And sometimes you can tape down the corners if you don't want to hold on to the edges of the paper. I just like having full pieces. Sometimes I tape down the edges and then it gives it that nice kind of crisp border, but for tinier paintings, I like to use up all of the space. But that's just a personal preference type deal. You don't have to do that. All right, and then while that is still kind of like wet, it's not like dry yet, rinse off your brush, dab it on the paper towel, and then I'm gonna go in with some color, and I'm not gonna go over it completely, like it's not gonna be a full wash. I'm just gonna do some drops. And as you see, since the page is still wet, it just kind of spreads out on its own. You don't really have to worry too much about where the color is going, or if it's like darker in some places, lighter in some places, and I'll show you why in just a minute. And then while it's still kind of damp, you get a paper towel. I'm just gonna rip off a small piece because I don't want to use the whole paper towel. I don't need to. And then I'm gonna put my hand right here on one of the parts that's covered by the masking fluid, just to kind of hold it down and dab. Just kind of dab away some of that color, and that gives it a little bit of texture in the back. And then you just kind of set down the paper towel. Now keep in mind the ink is still wet on the paper towel, so don't just place it like on the carpet or anything because it will stain. Just set it on another paper towel. Get your heat gun or blow dryer or whatever you're using and dry it. Alright, so something that you probably noticed is when I originally put the ink down, it was much, much darker, and then once I dry it, it's lighter. That happens, and that's okay. That's why you layer things up. So, oh, and I messed up on purpose to show you this. I put a little dab of the masking fluid on the background just to show that if you do that, you can just kind of peel it up. Then there will be a white dot. But I don't really want a white dot in the middle of my painting, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. Layer it up until you get it the shade that you want it to be, and everything is covered how you want it to be covered. And then just dry it again. And now this is what it looks like. So I want to do one last thing to the background before I peel up the masking fluid, and that is I'm going to take another section of paper towel, tear off a little bit, kind of crumple it up, give it an interesting look, right? Dab it in that green ink that I had and just dab all over the paper. Kind of haphazard, doesn't really matter where. And if it uses up all of that ink, that's okay. You can just mix up some more. Just make sure that you have plenty in the bottle. Now, this is what it looks like. You can see kind of closer the texture that's in the background. And then just dry it, because you want to make sure that your background is very, very dry before you even attempt moving the masking fluid, because again, you can and will rip your paper. And there you go. Now, once that's done, and as you can see, it kind of covered up that white spot. That's where it was, and it is no longer there. It's a little bit lighter, but I see it because I did it intentionally, but someone that doesn't know that that's like not supposed to be there won't even notice it. You get the masking fluid off the paper. You can use a tool like an eraser or something. Like there are some like rubber erasers that are just like they're made out of rubber. It's not an actual like eraser, like a graphite pencil or anything. But I just use my hand. So what you do is you hold down your paper and just very gently start doing this. You don't want to like rip it off the paper because it might take up some of your design with it. So you just kind of very gently pull it, and then once you have a good edge that you can grab, pull outwards. And that peels it right off. And then as you can see, there was ink all over that, and now it is clean. And then there you go, all of the eyes are clean. Now it's okay if when you're doing the masking fluid you get a little bit outside of your outline. You can fix that when you go back in with the outline later, and again, I'll demonstrate how later on in the video. Boom. Alright, so now I want to figure out what I want to do with these eyes. I'm not sure if I want to make them have like an iris and a pupil and look like actual eyeballs, if I want to make them look like cat's eyes or demon eyes or what, but I think I have an idea. So what I'm going to do is mix up more of my green color. This time I'm going to make it a little bit darker, a little bit more pigmented. And then what I'm going to do is take my absolute lightest color and start going in with some shadows, because I want the shadows to be the same color as the eyes, which is going to be green. So I'm going to lay down the shadows first. And what I do when I'm painting an eye is I kind of take the brush and just very thin line of that very light gray across the very top, and that gives it that kind of depth that you're looking for when you're doing an eyeball. They don't all have to look the exact same either. And the best thing I can suggest for doing ink washes, ink work, any kind of art really, is even if you're not confident in your brush strokes, try to be as confident as you can. Kind of trick yourself into thinking you know what you're doing, so that there's no hesitation and you get very straight, crisp, and clean lines. If that's what you're going for. That's a stylistic choice of mine. I try to get lines as clean as I can. But some people don't, and that's okay. And then for this one, it kind of pulled up in the middle here, so I'm just gonna go over it a second time and even that out just a bit. And if you have a puddle of ink that you need to get, you can dry off your brush and then just kind of mop up that extra ink with the brush, because the bristles absorb that extra moisture. So I'm gonna do that here too, just kind of get off that excess, rinse it, and set it aside. When using a heat gun, be sure that your hand is out of the way before you put the heat gun anywhere near it, because it will burn your fingers. Be very careful. Alright, and so since these are relatively small spaces, I'm going to use my medium brush to put the color. But first, I wanted to show you what the shadows look like. They're very light right now, but we're going to darken them up as we go. This is just to kind of help me visualize what the end product is going to be. And start painting. And I kind of leave little puddles in there because I have an idea that I want to try. And so I'm going to be painting a few eyes at a time versus one at a time, or all of them all at once. Just a few, so that way the paint is still damp. can see in contrast with the background how much brighter this is. So I have 3, rinse off the brush, dab it, and you want to be quick with this, so I'm going to go back in with the darkest ink wash that I have ready to go, and just kind of put little dabs in places. Rinse it, set it aside, grab my paper towel, and use a side that doesn't already have paint on it, and then just kind of dab it away. Kind of want the eyes to look like static, almost. And I'll work on that more as I go, but that's just for the sake of example. Alright, now I'm going to go back in. Now that we have the initial texture laid down, I'm just going to go back in with the color and make it more vibrant. Alright, that's all good to go. And if your paper starts to curl, that's okay. Watercolor paper just does that. Something that you can do to fix it is make sure that there's nothing in the way and that your paint is already dry. Lay it down upside down. Get a brush, get some clean water. Not a lot, you just need a little bit. Run it across the back of it. It doesn't have to be a lot at all, just make sure you get the corners and the edges, and as you'll see, it'll start to curl up again. A sketchbook or something flat and heavy, and just set it on top of it to flatten it back out. And then while that does that, I'm gonna take a break. I shall be back in a little bit. So, not gonna lie, my voice got very tired and so did I. I am not used to recording real-time stuff. But I'm just going around the outer edge of the outlines with my tiny lining brush and that dark ink that I showed you in the beginning of the video, adding the line in the center and then adding some texture around the outside so that it looks like there is depth around each eye. And this is what the finished product looks like. I just took that white gel pen that I showed you, the jelly roll in the beginning of the video, and added the highlights in the middle of the eye and then a little bit at the corners to just sort of make it pop. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something and I'll see you next time. Love you guys. Bye.